Cucumbers with Anxiety. Chapter 1. My eyes creaked open to slowly reveal a white landscape with a grey horizon. The pile of covers on top of me rose and fell with my every reluctant breath. The featureless white ceiling finally came into focus along with where it abruptly gave way to grey walls. He let me pick the colors for the bedroom. It stands as evidence for my simultaneous preference for vintage and modern interior design. The walls were a pale grey, the closets a pearl white with brushed steel handles, while the floor and bed were of a dark, cracked wood, on top of which I was being smothered by a mountain of covers that could bring down the Titanic. My conflicting interior design preferences are really just a manifestation of myself constantly wanting opposing things at the same time. I want a house where brown leather couches swallow you as you curl up in them with a book, which smells like woodwork and a charming fire. I also want a house that is primarily glass, black granite, and sleek silver, that feels as though a disembodied robotic voice would obey your every command. I could feel the hair on the sides of my head sticking. The sun is beaming outside, yet I am drowning in covers until late morning. I should get up. I know I should. If only to avoid that cold feeling when I realized that I stayed in bed past noon. It should give you a brief glimpse into my mental state when I admit that getting out of bed before noon is usually considered a personal victory. It's hard finding the motivation for any action when it feels like the mere act of breathing is exhausting. The worst part is, I'm getting more exhausted every single day. I'm like an automaton, slowly unwinding. I'm constantly resting, but never feel rested. I don't have to guess how this day will go. I will make some tasteless breakfast, even if it is past noon, kill some time in front of the television, perhaps throw my attention at a book and see if anything sticks. Take a late afternoon nap, then kill a few hours before I can crawl into bed again. I've had this day for a couple of months now. I spent a few minutes desperately trying to remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. It's recommended that you eat a different breakfast every day. Cornflakes on one day, oats on another. Then, once a week, go all out with some eggs, toast, and sizzling sausages as a reward for making it through the week. It's effective but very simple. If you can distinguish the days in your head, you already feel less depressed. That is what depression really is. You can explain it however you'd like. A chemical imbalance, bad energy, or that your chi is out of flow. In reality, it's just a disconnection between you and the world. It's like watching everything you do on a dull screen, seeing yourself follow the path of least resistance with little to no agency. The world is filtered through all the distance and apathy. Oats. I had oats yesterday. I begged my body to push the covers off me, and eventually it obeyed. Air filled my lungs and fresh air caressed my body. The wooden floor was neither warm nor cold as I stepped on it with my bare feet. I stumbled my way toward the door and almost walked past the closet. An annoying, chipper voice rang through my head saying, "Always put on something to wear in the morning. You already feel more productive when you at least put on some clothes." I removed my pajamas and threw them in the bottommost drawer. I grabbed a white tank top from the top of the pile. It is the same shirt I wore yesterday, and the day before. Tonight, I will return the shirt to the top of the pile, and in most probability wear it again tomorrow. I did shake things up and put on some jean shorts. It's not that I wore something different yesterday, it's that I didn't wear pants yesterday. I left a pink bra, in dire need of a wash, in the closet. I don't want to feel that productive. The house was silent. The neighborhood was silent. Everybody was at work or at school. My bare footsteps sounded thunderous in comparison. There used to be birds singing around here. I remember them. Their joyous whistling used to fill the empty spaces of sound in quiet days. The wind used to brush through the leaves and the grass with a constant rustling sound that proved the world was alive. I glanced through the window at the top of the stairs. The trees swayed in the wind. Quick flitting shapes proved that the birds were still there. I just couldn't hear them. The trees used to have color. I just couldn't remember them. The leaves were always a striking green this time of year. The grass was well kept in this neighborhood, and a quick glance down the street would give you the illusion of a lime sea. Now it's grey. I know in my heart the colors are still there. I can still remember the feeling of freshly cut grass between my toes. Somewhere between transmission, translation, and interpretation, the color is lost. Now it's all grey. I thundered softly down the stairs, only to pause at the small table at the bottom. I always pause here. My life is paused here. A small collection of precious photos in unique frames were proudly displayed on this table. I picked each up in turn and traced them with the tip of my finger, staring at the strange woman that resembled me, save for the courage to smile. My dark pets, I called them. If I didn't stop myself, I could get lost in the moment, captured there, and stay for a while. When I returned, I sometimes found that I brought a slight smile back with me. But that smile was never mine. It belonged to a better time. There is one thing I know for sure. I looked damn good in a white dress. My tummy audibly voiced its dissatisfaction with the lack of breakfast that's currently entering me. The cold white tiles of the kitchen made me shiver as I tiptoed to the pantry. I grabbed a box of oats and soon watched a perfect stream of breakfast pour into a brown bowl with the words, "Home is where the tart is," on the side. When we moved in, he quickly bought a kitchen set. 6 perfectly identical coffee mugs, 6 perfectly identical dinner plates, 6 perfectly identical tea plates, and 6 perfectly identical cereal bowls, each more identical than the last. I felt like I was living in a hotel, so I quickly bought some bowls and mugs with a more personal touch. Each guest that visited had a designated coffee mug that I bought specially while thinking of them. The Batman mug is mine. I love my Batman mug. Anyone using my Batman mug would promptly have to deal with a medium-sized lady jumping on their back and pulling at their hair. I soon watched my pitch-black Batman mug fill with pitch-black coffee. I like my coffee like I like my sexual fantasies, filled with sugar and too dark for others to handle. I sat down in the living room with a bowl of cereal on my lap and the coffee on the coffee table, which seemed appropriate. The couch gave a satisfying sigh as it swallowed my butt. This couch is so used to my butt, it probably has pink eye. I reached to the cushion next to me and my heart sank when my fingers failed to grasp around the remote. I glared menacingly towards the couch nearest to the kitchen, where the remote sat unjaded on the armrest. A brief battle took place in my mind between my motivation to get up and fetch the remote and the lethargy begging to stay right here. The battle was brief, because my lethargy was a gladiator with a broadsword, and my motivation was a 12-year-old with a hairpin. I instead turned my gaze towards the off-duty television and watched my reflection feed herself. I just hoped she was enjoying her breakfast more than I was. I placed the bowl on the coffee table next to the steaming coffee. I can't drink coffee while it's still hot. I have to wait until it cools down to a lukewarm temperature. My brain knows it makes sense to make coffee with lukewarm water, but my heart says that would be sacrilege. The coffee table was one more dark wood addition to the house, though it was a bit naked these days. There used to be a fruit bowl in the center, but I stopped buying fruit and I got tired of staring at an empty bowl. So now it stands naked in the living room. What a slut. I picked up the book I've been nursing for the last couple of weeks from the floor. Reading is just imagining things while staring at a dead tree, but I guess it's one of those things you really shouldn't think about too much. I can't read anymore. The letters and the words all make sense. I can sometimes even understand a sentence. But once I string a couple of those together, my train of thought leaves its tracks to go on a more scenic route. Even when I manage to make it through a couple of pages without diving down some obscure memory from years ago, I struggle to make real progress. I've always been too empathetic towards characters. I found myself screaming at the pages when the male character broke it off with his girlfriend to protect her. Don't they know that love is precious? Don't they know you should savor every single moment you get to spend being loved? Love is too rare and valuable to shove under the rug. It is worth the risk of anything, and the loss of everything. I flicked the page with my finger. Then I realized that I didn't actually read the previous one. My eyes followed all the lines and touched upon the words like a dress rehearsal, but my brain was sitting in the corner, twiddling its thumbs. My eyes did backflips as I flicked the page backwards. I stretched out the book in front of my eyes and brought it close, as if I was sticking my brain's nose in the mess it's made. I conjured vivid images in my mind, complete with camera angles and dramatic acting, and whipped the reluctant actors until they played out the scene. The actors were soon replaced with familiar faces, playing out a similar memory from a life that doesn't exist anymore. I grunted and threw the book across the room, exasperated. I sat up and took the coffee from the table. I laid my head back against the couch and stared up at the ceiling. White, featureless, blissful nothingness. The thought brought such comfort to me. Blissful, endless existence, with no cracks or ridges. My brain unwound itself like a bowl of spaghetti whenever I stared at the featureless ceiling. But then I imagined the ceiling was black. Endless, featureless blackness, with no cracks or ridges. The thought scared me. I think that's why I'm still here. Perhaps the only reason I'm still here. The doorbell rang. My body went cold and I froze. My first thought that ran through my head was, I have a doorbell? I sat motionless for a couple of seconds, like a chameleon caught mid-step. I slowly brought the mug to my lips and took a sip. Still a bit hot, but I will manage. I swallowed with a satisfied ah sound, the bitterness tugging at the corners of my jaw. I brought the mug to my lips for a second sip. The doorbell rang again. All right. 2 rings is courtesy. 3 rings and they know I'm here. Am I just being lazy and silly? I should just get up, shouldn't I? Yes, I should. With great effort, I separated myself from the couch, walked a few steps, and picked up the TV remote. It was a long march, but I will thank myself for the effort later. I placed my fingers on the power button and the mute button, readying my reflexes to ensure that whoever is determined to interrupt my daily ritual of doing nothing the entire day won't know I'm here. The doorbell rang a third time. I clenched my teeth and threw the remote on the couch. I have the whole day planned out. Whoever that is at my door is just being rude. I marched towards the front door, making my footsteps heavy and angry, which was harder than I anticipated as I was barefoot. It's Sunday, I yelled to the door. It's Wednesday, replied a voice, male. What's the difference? A pause. I don't really know how to answer that. I threw open the door and almost choked on my breath. I know that face. A distant memory knocked on my conscious mind and asked permission to enter. The features fell into place one by one. I know those eyes, piercing green, yet somehow dark, always staring through a brow of thick brown hair. These aforementioned eyes stared into mine for a brief second before they traveled around the contours of my face, my hair, my body, then looked past me and prodded through my house. I felt like I was giving a tour while he was still standing outside. Wandering eyes, I always called them. He could never keep his eyes steady. It always had to wander to everything in sight. I know those lips. Their corners always curled into a slight smile when he wasn't paying attention, and a more pronounced smile when he was. I know the shadow of a scar above his lip, which he got when he fell off his bike when he was 9, but he told all the girls at school that he got in a fight. I know the lines on his forehead, which would appear out of nowhere when he frowned in concentration, but would disappear into youthfulness when he returned to his aloof state, like it did now, after his eyes completed their tour through my house. I know this face. I knew this face better than my own. I just haven't seen it in nearly 10 years. Come, we're gonna be late, he said inexplicably. Alex? Is that you? I managed to stammer after a couple of seconds. It's starting at 6. I don't want to miss anything, he continued with a goofy grin. He knew he was being obtuse. I haven't seen you since high school, I said, more to myself than to him, trying to fill the gaps in my mind, feeling a sudden coldness when I remembered how he left. We're gonna be late if we don't leave right now, he pleaded dramatically. His meaning finally registered with me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not dressed properly, I haven't brushed my teeth, my hair looks horrible. I'm not wearing any makeup, I haven't shaved my legs or anywhere else for that matter. Even if we're going to a morgue, I will be the worst looking person there, I explained. His face lit up despite all this. I agree, you look horrible, he exclaimed, but we're still going. Now. My mind put up the best fight it had in months to stand its ground. No. His face suddenly became strikingly solemn. Elizabeth, Margaret, Karen, Artabasis, Cynthia, Spock, Rye, he enunciated. None of those names are any of my names. We are leaving right now. If you do not come willingly, I will overpower you and drag you to my car. I am very well versed in physical combat. I once punched a kid who took my balloon. You punched a boy who took your balloon? His face froze. Yes, he suddenly blurted out. A boy. Anyway, let's go! My mind flailed and fought against the unknown of what might be waiting for me, but only half-heartedly. It eventually settled on the path of least resistance. Fine, I sighed. I grabbed my purse, stepped into some shoes, and locked the door behind me. Alex's eyes drifted to my shirt as I approached. I spun on my heel and fetched a jacket inside the house. I suddenly remembered I wasn't wearing a bra. Alex ran ahead to the car standing on the side of the street. He stood next to me and presented the car like a matador. Behold the X-Mobile, he said, and gave a little bow. What stood there was a pale blue hatchback, so small it looked like it was once a pale blue SUV's pimple. It looked as if it was handed down to him by his great-grandfather. It would have been handed down each generation, but both his dad and grandfather gave it back. The X-Mobile is dirty, I stated. Alex looked wounded. It may need a bath, but you can still tell what color it is. Barely. It says wash me on the rear window, and even that is covered in dust. Alex deflated. Will you get in? Will things crawl on me when I do? I asked, but I was already walking around the car. I promise all the bugs in the car are extremely well behaved. I got in and sat on a surprisingly soft fabric seat. Alex got in next to me. Why are you getting in? Don't you have to go crankshaft started at the front? Alex rolled his eyes. It's not that old. I can't find a hole in the floor to stick my feet out. And this isn't Flintstones either. The car meowed to life, and soon we were speeding off down the road. The car wasn't fast, but it felt fast when you don't brake for turns at all. I quickly yanked at the seatbelt, which was a mistake. The seatbelt clamped up halfway across my chest. I yanked at it a couple of times, but it stubbornly refused. I entered a little dance with it where I let it retract a little, then tried again. It didn't work. Soon the seatbelt was back in its original position, and I gave up. I held on to whatever I could and bent my knees to fill the legroom and braced against the sides. I glanced over at Alex, who was fiercely concentrating on the road. So, Alex, what have you been up to since... When is the last time you laughed? He asked abruptly. When's the last time I... What? When's the last time you laughed? It's a simple question. My head hurt. I'm not sure. I cannot recall a specific instance. You don't remember laughing at anything recently? He prodded. No, I don't. No funny movies. Someone didn't tell you a joke. You didn't see a dog walk into a glass door and knew you shouldn't laugh, but you did anyway. I don't have a dog or glass doors. Alex gasped. Really? You should get a dog. I'm gonna get you a dog. Please don't get me a dog. Small dog or a big dog. I'm not feeding it. I'll feed it. So you're getting a small dog then? It's cheaper for me, he said and snorted. I sighed deeply, hoping he would just forget this whole conversation. Where are we going anyway? I can't tell you. It's a surprise, he answered. Surprise! He yelled suddenly as the car swerved to the side and skidded into a parking space. I climbed out of the glove compartment. Waitable suspense, I muttered sarcastically. He thanked me anyway. I looked out the window. A comedy club? You brought me to a comedy club. You can't be serious. Some part of me thought that if I'm being dragged out of the house, someone better had died. Alex's eyes shifted. No? Maybe? He jumped out of the car and pranced around it to open the door for me. Shut up, I scoffed as I rushed past him. Let's just get this over with, I muttered as he slammed the door behind me, which at least shook some dust off it. I took a glance down the long road that stretches through the heart of the city. The daily twilight drizzle gave the street a sheen, doused with the neon colors of whatever club or restaurant was closest. If I were to stand on the street and look down, I would probably see my face perfectly reflected moments before I'd get hit by a truck. The ground beneath my feet vibrated with all the bass-heavy music from the nearby nightclubs, and probably all the faraway nightclubs. I never knew about the vibrant nightlife that rages while I turn in for sleep. Nor do I care. I usually avoid loud, people-infested spaces like I avoid STDs. So, avoiding nightclubs is really killing two birds with one shunning stone. I could never understand how going to a nightclub is known as socializing when talking is one of the few things you can't do. Amongst all the noise and vibration, the comedy club was a vacuum. We walked through the door and I felt transported. The noise and the bright colors gave way to dead silence, dim, dark yellow lights, and a thick carpet. The club was populated with small round tables surrounded by bar stools. I realized just how quiet it was when even I could hear the voices in Alex's head. I saw that the club was inhabited by people with various drinks in front of them, and they were all turned toward a guy standing on a small stage. He was sweating profusely and swallowing almost twice a second, pulling on his collar as he was doing so. He opened his mouth to speak a couple of times, trying to start a sentence with varying levels of confidence, but no sound came out. Screw this, he eventually muttered, which I probably wouldn't have heard if the club wasn't as quiet as a graveyard during reading time. He stormed off the stage, and the sound of indiscernible conversation swelled from all around. Damn, we missed it, Alex said to me as we walked toward the table. Missed what exactly? It didn't seem like we were missing the greatest comedy show ever, did it? Nobody was laughing. That's precisely when it's the funniest, Alex exclaimed in a high-pitched voice. When nobody is laughing? Okay, I see what's going on here. So the word funny means schadenfreude. Alex interrupted me and sat down at a table. Look, I reserved us a table, Alex said as he took a small plastic reserved sign and stuffed it into a purse hanging from the chair behind him. This table isn't for us, is it? I asked as I sat down reluctantly. It is now, Alex answered and looked at me expectantly, widening his eyes. I ignored him. Instead, I took up a slightly sticky plastic menu and scanned through the drinks. I have a firm belief that there are no good tasting alcoholic drinks. Some taste better than others, that is true, but it will never taste better than a soda, or a coffee, or even a milkshake. It's this great secret that nobody dares to admit. No one likes the taste of tequila. That is indisputable fact. People who drink tequila just want to forget the things they've already decided they're going to do later that night. There are no good tasting alcoholic drinks, only less painful ways to get drunk. Now, I just need to choose the least painful drink that will dull the blade that is Alex's obnoxiousness. I lowered the menu and found Alex's eyes, stretched as wide as they can go, still staring at me while he was visibly shaking. I sighed. What do you mean by schadenfreude, Alex? Do tell. I feigned interest. Glad you asked, he blurted out, and his body seemed to deflate as it released the tension. By far, the best comedy act is the worst comedy act. Witnessing a person stand on a stage where he worked so hard to be, putting his heart, his dignity, and possibly his career on the line in front of a crowd of people he doesn't know and just crashing. It's beautiful to see. It is destruction on the deepest and highest level, absolute and total disintegration. A person telling a joke that he has been preparing and practicing for weeks and being met by this overwhelming, deafening silence from a crowd of people that does not find it funny. It is art. It is like watching the fiery death of a phoenix, the fall of an empire. It it's like watching the Hindenburg go up in flames and down in history as one of the most spectacular failures in the history of humanity. It doth bring a tear to my eye. He wasn't lying. Throughout his speech, he actually stood up, put his hand on his heart, and by the end, there were definite tears in his eyes. You do know people died in the Hindenburg disaster, right? I asked slowly. He looked at me with a frown of confusion. Well, I highly doubt a comedy act could be that bad, he replied, missing the point. He sat down again, then immediately slapped his hands on the table. Schadenfreude, my dear. Watching someone crash and burn and enjoying every second of it. You have to laugh at other people's misery, Paige. Still not my name. Laughing at another's misery is a way to learn from their mistakes and advance as a species. Besides, misery is a part of life. It will find us sooner or later. Laughing at it is the best way, nay, the only way to deal with it. Does that go for yourself as well? Double, he replied instantly. When you're standing up to your nipples in mud and it finally dawns on you that there's no way out, you have to look at yourself and say, well, damn, I guess they were right. I can't cross this river by foot. I'll have to send them a you were right postcard from 6 feet under. Do you know what would happen if I ever go skydiving and halfway down my parachute won't open? You'll laugh? My ass off. I'll laugh all the way down. There's nothing else you can do. There's no point in being angry, scared, or having an inch of regret. All you can do, all you should do, is laugh. Okay, but how are you going to learn something from a skydiving accident gone wrong? Aha, he said with a pointed finger, then paused. Yeah, you got me there. I forgot what I was talking about halfway through. You'll get used to it. That last sentence made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off as someone walked on stage. All right, ladies and gentlemen, give a big welcome to your next entertainer, James Foster. The crowd applauded dutifully as a guy wearing too many layers walked on stage. He was slightly hunched and he stood in front of the mic with his feet askew. His eyes shifted around the audience. The awkwardness was just an act, though. He was as calm as he'd ever been. This wasn't his first rodeo. The crowd quieted down and he just kept staring a few seconds, bringing forth a wave of laughter. Finally, he took a breath. The key to a good comedy act is to start strong and end strong. So I wrote 2 good jokes. Laughter erupted from the crowd, and not out of duty. That was the first one, he added quietly, and the crowd's laughter refreshed. I glanced over at Alex, who sat with a slight smile on his face. I was going to join the debate team, but someone talked me out of it. The crowd erupted again with genuine hearty laughter. His jokes were neat packages of funny. Alex still kept a slight smile, which I think is just his natural resting face. I like what mechanics wear overall. Get it? Because they wear overalls? I got it. He awkwardly stumbled over the explanation of the joke, and the audience just kept laughing harder as he did. Alex almost snorted. If you think about it, an ambulance is just an anxious taxi. A hearse is just a sad ambulance. I played poker with tarot cards. I got it straight and 4 people died. I, on the other hand, was promised great money in my future, which I got since I won the poker game. My wife and I decided we didn't want children. Our children weren't thrilled when they found out. We assume we never saw them again. We just moved while they were at school. His cockiness, shaky voice, and his constant pauses and slow speech fed into this character, which was making the audience shrivel up with laughter. I believe the phrase is, he killed it. He thanked the audience and stumbled off stage, leaving an uproarious applause behind him. That was funny, wasn't it? Alex yelled over the applause. Wasn't it? He asked again with a nudge in my ribs when I didn't answer. Yeah, he was good. I liked him, I said with a slightly too enthusiastic nodding. The jokes were fine, I guess. They were funny, but none of them really compelled me to laughter. You didn't laugh once, though, Alex said when the noise finally died down. Well, neither did you, I deflected. I don't care whether he laughed or not. He was putting me on the spot. And that's my least favorite place to be. Save for on a stage, completely naked, giving a speech to the whole school which I didn't prepare for on a topic I don't know anything about, which my therapist says is a normal nightmare to have, but I don't care if other people have it too. That shit's not normal. Nah, Alex expressed with a wave of his hand. I've heard all those jokes before. I don't think you have, he said and inspected me for a reaction, which I didn't want to give. I just shrugged and stared into nothing. You want a drink? I'll go get us some. Beer, I replied without thinking. He jumped up and walked off. I hate sitting alone. I get this weird feeling that everyone is staring at me when I sit alone in a public space. I try to seem busy by taking out my phone and just staring at it, pretending that I text people and that I have friends. It's strange, isn't it? Caring so much about how people see you, while at the same time not caring about those people at all. Being obsessed with how you appear to people who you are likely never going to see again. I tried to kill a few minutes until Alex came skipping back with 2 drinks in his hand. He placed a brown glass bottle in front of me with a light coat of precipitated water on its surface. I immediately grabbed it and doused my dry throat with a bitter burning sensation. Alex, on the other hand, plopped down a pink cocktail with a tiny umbrella and a silly straw sticking out. What the hell are you drinking? I asked over a slight burp. A Cadillac margarita, he announced proudly and sucked on the straw with his eyes closed. He swallowed with a satisfied, sweet. I looked at him judgmentally. Stop looking at me judgmentally, he scowled. That's a girl's drink, I said. Which girl? Does she want it back? Alex replied, looking around the room. I mean, that's a drink for women. Yeah, well, beer is a drink for men, he said, looking offended. Women can drink beer, I replied instantly. Then men can drink pink Cadillac margaritas with an added lemon wedge, a cute umbrella, and the manliest silly straw you've ever seen. Manly silly straw? The manliest silly straw. It has seen every Chuck Norris movie twice, shaves its mustache with a pocket knife, and watches all the sports. It's made of pure protein and testosterone, which feeds into the margarita as it passes. By the time this drink is empty, I'll have a full beard. I snorted before I could help myself. Half because of what he said, and half because I imagined that baby smooth face of his with a beard. It's amazing how much he hadn't changed since school. He will always maintain that boyish look of his, probably into his 80s. Alex saw me snorting, even though I bit it back as fast as I could. He returned to sipping his drink with a look of pure victory in his eyes. He knew he almost made me laugh, and he loved it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dule Stern. The crowd applauded, clearly more excited this time around for a new guest. An attractive man with dark skin owned the stage the moment he set foot on it. His suit was a dark maroon and silky smooth, and I'm pretty sure I could see myself in his black leather shoes. He smiled broadly as he grabbed the microphone off the stand and strolled around the stage. Don't worry, I've never heard of you either. Now I guess you should get to know me a little better if we're going to spend such an intimate time together. I have several hobbies, including collecting empty bottles, which just sounds a lot better than alcoholic, doesn't it? People don't usually like me very much, not even my family, especially my family. My father only took me fishing once, and I remember swimming back to shore thinking, my dad doesn't like me very much. When I went to college, they threw a going away party, according to the letter. Not even women really like me. A girl told me to come over. There's nobody home. I went over. There was nobody home. He kept the audience fed with constant jokes, timing each punchline as the laughter died down from the previous one. Alex smiled broadly at some jokes, but never quite broke out in a full chorus. I, too, relented a smile. Self-deprecating jokes have a way of getting to me. Maybe that's what Alex was talking about. After every joke, Alex would glance my way to see if I was laughing. But I made sure he wouldn't get lucky. Even my smile was quickly concealed behind a beer bottle. Alex applauded as the man walked off stage, though with less enthusiasm than the rest of the club. Come on, you didn't laugh once, Alex accused me. Guess I'm just not in the mood for laughing, I replied, not meeting his gaze. And which mood is the right mood for laughing exactly? Laughing gets you in the right mood, not the other way around. There's only one act left, and you better laugh. He threatened me and stuck his finger in my face, then promptly started scratching my nose. I slapped his hand away, and I think I hurt him a little, which made me feel warm inside. Perhaps you need another beer, or six, or perhaps a pink Cadillac margarita? Beer, I growled. Alex disappeared and reappeared exactly 2 minutes later. I knew because I was staring at my phone. Alex placed my beer in front of me. No manly drink this time? I asked as I saw he was holding his own beer. Nah, too much testosterone. There is a limit on the amount of testosterone a man can take in within 24 hours before he turns into the Hulk, he said and took a swig from his beer. Ah, and a monstrous being wrecking the entire club might slightly inconvenience the other patrons? Precisely. I'm drinking beer as a courtesy to the janitors. Janitors have it hard enough as it is. Alex stole another sip from his beer. I worked as a janitor once, for the experience. Still on my bucket list, I retorted between sips. Yeah, I had to quit after they told me to scrape gum off the bottom of a table. I have this weird thing where I'm disgusted towards a collection of other people's DNA. He trailed off into a mutter. Oh, Alex, I think that might be the only normal thing about you, I said. Alex considered this, then nodded as the last act walked on stage. I wasn't paying much attention to him. The audience maintained a constant chuckle, so I guess he was serviceable. Instead, my attention was focused on Alex, dreading the predictable glance after every joke, hoping to catch me in the act of laughing. What was his game, anyway? I started to get really annoyed by his constant prodding and poking, like I'm some sort of a lab rat at a clown university. Why was it so important to him that I laugh? Why did I even come here? I could be at home, embracing the quiet cold of the night in front of the television. I could be alone, instead of surrounded by a bunch of drunk idiots giggling mindlessly to a dancing monkey on a stage. Alex just shows up at my house almost a decade after I saw him last, all but physically drags me out of my house, and I let him? What is his obsession with me? Why is he here? My frustration rose as the questions piled up in my head. Good luck, Alex. From now on, you're not getting as much as a grin out of me. Well, not even a smile? Alex said when the guy finally finished. He was quite good, He really wasn't, I replied, deadpan. No, he wasn't, Alex agreed instantly. I really hoped for better. Alex slapped his hand on the table. I know when I'm beat. You win, Tracy. Not even getting warmer with my name. Does this mean we get to leave now? I replied and reached for my purse. Oh no, my dear Susan. Now you force me to take drastic measures. What does that mean? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our last act. Not so fast there, buddy, Alex piped up. I'd like to have a go if you don't mind. Alex got out of his chair. Everybody in the room shifted in their seats to look at this strange volunteer comedian. I tried to melt into the ground. Please no, Alex, please don't do this. I whispered loudly through gritted teeth. He spun on his heel and flashed me a smile. Schadenfreude, my dear, he said simply, then walked toward the stage. The announcer's head was clearly racing as his mouth hung agape. Yeah, okay, sure, if everyone is fine with it. He threw his bane to the crowd, who groaned in response. See, they totally want me. Alex jumped on the stage. The announcer was visibly sweating. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage. Wait, what is your name? Roch. Mike, Alex whispered to him. Please give a hand for Mike Roch. I wish I knew if the announcer ever realized why people laughed at that. So, what's brown and sticky? The gum I just stuck under the table. Sorry, janitors. People in the audience looked at each other for comprehension, while others laughed, thinking they just didn't get the joke. I had to bite my lip. What's red and smells like blue paint? Red paint. A burst of air escaped from my lungs before I even realized. Luckily, it didn't make much sound, and I don't think Alex saw. I raised my purse to my face to hide my toothy smile. The audience only groaned. I loaned my friend 10,000 for plastic surgery. Now I don't know what he looks like. My shoulders shook like I was holding a jackhammer throwing a tantrum. My ribs hurt from keeping this laugh contained. The audience remained dead quiet. Did you hear about the two guys who stole the calendar? They each got 6 months. I snorted as the laughter inside banged on the fragile door that is my resolve. The crowd started booing and heckling him, which only added to the fuel to my twisted sense of humor. Alex spun back and forth in response to the hostile crowd. It gets better, I swear. My girlfriend and I almost didn't have a second date because I didn't open the car door for her. Instead, I just swam for the surface. I snorted and giggled silently. My body rocked back and forth like a choking ape. It was all I could do to keep the air out of my lungs to make the escaping laughter silent. I can't take much more of this. This has to stop. What's orange and sounds like a parrot? A carrot. I lost it. Atlas himself could not hold up the wave of laughter that burst out of me. The deep laughter gathered deep in my belly and streamed out of my mouth as I threw my head back and cackled. The train had left the station at full speed, and now there was no stopping it. It was just so unexpected. A carrot. Sounds like a parrot. Tears streamed down my face and I had to gasp for air. When the sound of my own laughter left my ears, I could hear Alex jumping up and down on stage. I did it! I did it! Victory! Victory! The room turned from me to him, extremely confused about the strange man celebrating a strange accomplishment. They will never understand what just happened here. End of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed.